buenos días y bienvenidas a todos a esta nueva edición de entrevistas a expositores de Congreso Futuro 2025. ¿Qué humanidad queremos ser? Y en esta ocasión me acompaña Hartmut Rosa. Hartmut Rosa es profesor de Sociología General y Teórica de la Friedrich Schiller University y director del Max Weber College en la Universidad de Erfurt. Es reconocido como uno de los principales teóricos sociales contemporáneos y ha desarrollado investigaciones influyentes en áreas como teoría de la modernidad. Bienvenido, Hartmut. Welcome, Hartmut. How are you?
Hello. I'm quite fine this morning. Thanks a lot.
Great. You've been, this is the second time you're a speaker at Congreso Futuro, but it's the first time that you come to Chile to participate in this event, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've been a few times in Chile already, but not in this great place.
Well, welcome. I hope you have a great time participating here at Congreso Futuro,
Surely.
which this year is based around the idea of the humanity and society and how society has transformed in the last years. Most people would say faster than in other times, and that's actually what your work has focused on the past years. You talk about acceleration, but
Yeah.
can you tell us more about what type of acceleration or what you define as acceleration?
Yeah, I think it's very important to really have a precise concept of acceleration because, for a long time people have felt something is accelerating. So some said the time itself is accelerating, which I think is kind of confused concept, right? But some think history is accelerating or society is accelerating. And in my view, there are three different forms. One are technological accelerations, right? Quite obviously, we have an incredible speeding up of transport, right? So I always think if we watch the Earth from the outside, which you could do in Chile, of course, very well, when you're in astronomy, and then you could really see how we set the world in motion, literally, right? With more people are on the move, things are on the move, we move the Earth almost, with cars, with trains, with trucks, with subways, and so on. But then we also speed up communication, like all the way to the internet, right? And the production of goods and services. So this is technological. But the second form is, and a lot of people feel that the social fabric is changing. The world does not stay the same, right? So every day there is not just news, right? But we have, for example, we exchange clothes at a faster pace, fashions, but also ideas, types of association, right? So the world around us changes faster and faster. I call this the acceleration of social change. And finally, there's also an acceleration of the pace of life. We try to live faster, get more things done within a day or within a week or so. So overall, it's really kind of dynamizing the world, setting it in motion. And this is not new in the 21st century. It's been going on since the 18th century, but we are now, with the digital technologies in particular, we have reached a new level of acceleration.
Yeah, and what you mentioned is really interesting and resonates with a lot of people because we feel that the world we lived in, 15 years ago is not the same today.
That's it, yeah.
And we always trying to catch something, right?
Yeah.
There's always this feeling of being left behind.
Yeah.
So in terms of technology, for example, technology always offers us this possibility of everything will be faster, easier.
Yeah.
But is technology fulfilling that promise?
Well, I think technology carries at least two promises, right? One is that it allows us to be faster, and I think it's fulfilling that promise, right? It's really true that it's faster if you take the plane than if you take the train, for example, right? And of course, it's faster if you use the telephone than if you have to walk or whatever. So technology is speeding up the processes in life, but it's not delivering on two other grounds. Number one, you would think that if we are faster in doing what we need to do, we can relax. We have more time, right? And that's not true since ages, right? The promise always is if you get faster, then you have more time. But it's exactly the opposite, right? You can really see as a sociologist or a historian looking at society, the faster we get, the more people feel pressed for time. We're short on time. We never have enough, right?
Yeah.
So that is to do with what I call dynamic stabilization. we live in a world which needs to speed up in order to keep what we have. We need to achieve growth, for example. That means we need to produce more, we need to consume more, to distribute more in the same amount of time, right? So while we get faster, we have to deal with more and more things, right? And there's even an explosion of the number of tasks, for example, we have to do. So the technological speed up is not giving us the time promised, but I think what is more important is that there's the promise of a good life, of happiness, right? So the idea always was, if we use all these technologies, then we can finally care about what life really means, what it is about, right? To actually achieve the good life. And it seems that this has never been delivered, right? It's a bit like you say, if you allow me that thought, because I find it very important. You said it's always like a dream in front. We're chasing it, right? But we never reach it. And that's certainly true for most people, particularly in the middle classes, right? The idea is if only I get the high school diploma, then the good life starts, but then you realize it's a very shaky time. You have to find a place to work or a course to study. So you think, if I finish my studies, then the good life starts, right? But then you're in a very shaky phase again, right? Because maybe you try to get a flat or an apartment or raise a family. So it's always postponed, right? What I'm troubled with as a sociologist is that I think so far our modern society in Chile, Latin America, as in Northern America or Europe, we had this idea of moving forward. Life gets better. We overcome scarcity, right? We overcome time shortage, we overcome ignorance and so on. So the idea of progress, not as a philosophical concept, but as a concept of everyday life, the idea that it will be better, or particularly our kids will have a better life. This was a huge promise of modern society, I would say, right, of our common humanity. We are working hard. A lot of people say in Chile in particular, but elsewhere too, we work hard, we don't have much, but our kids will have a free life, right? And this kind of collective bright horizon where we can move towards has disappeared. And this, I think, is dramatic for us as human beings, because now the feeling is, if we don't run faster, right, if we don't work harder, right, we will fall back. So we are no longer running towards a goal, towards a bright horizon, but we run away from the apocalypse, from the abyss, which is coming from behind, right? And still, even if we are successful, we will maybe fall to climate crisis or economic downfall and so on. So I would say right now we are no longer even running for the dream. We are running away from the abyss from behind.
That's a really interesting way to look at, because, yeah, you're right. We always, when it seems, at least for me and what you're saying, that we think, well, we can't fetch the dream. Yeah, I couldn't do it in my lifetime, but I could do it for my children.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this always, because I heard my grandparents told my mom and dad, or my parents telling the same to me, and I now find myself saying, well, if it's not for me, it's for the next generation.
Is it really? Because we actually know from empirical data that almost all over the world, actually with the exception of Africa, right, now parents no longer think their kids will have a better life.
Yes.
They're almost convinced. More than 70% say their kids will have a worse life, right? It will be worse than the life we have. And this, I think, is a cultural change which is huge.
Yeah, and speaking about this cultural change, we always have this idea of the world is getting better, like you said, but now there's a slightly change.
Yeah.
And at some point, I remember talking with you, that saying that we're trying to master everything, and at some point we ended up not mastering anything.
Yes.
So, is there a relation with this idea, with this new way to view the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this acceleration, if you so like, right, is the kind of the objective side which you can structurally measure, right? But I think as societies, we are self-interpreting animals. So who we are is not kind of defined objectively, but it depends on our self-interpretation of our understanding of ourselves, right? And this is, by the way, why I like this year's Congress theme, right? What kind of humanity do we want to be? I think this is exactly the question we need to ask, right? It has to do with the self-interpretation, right? And there, I think modernity is cultural side, right? The global regime, if you so like, was the idea that we want to have control over the world, that we can command it, right? I sometimes talk of the AAA horizon of the good life, which means we want to make the world available and attainable and accessible. It means we want to have a better view of what there is with large telescopes and better microscopes. We want to have access. We want to go there, even go to the moon, go to the Mars, right? But also penetrate matter and in quantum physics are everywhere. Right? And we want to control it. We want to control the processes, like we want to control whether it's bright light in this room or dark, or whether it's hot or cold or loud or soft or so. So we want to have control over the environment and over our lives. And but I think now we realize that the world is essentially uncontrollable, right? While we want to control it, we realize we actually create what I call monsters of uncontrollability, right? For example, I mean, climate crisis is such a monster, right? So it's lurking in our backs while we want to control nature, and we got quite some way, right? Yeah. We control nature quite a lot. But now the climate crisis and maybe other disasters, right, are lurking in the back. It's like when we got to matter from the inside. We split the atom, nuclear fusion or nuclear fission, right? And but then the nuclear bomb or even the power plant which explodes is a kind of monster we created. And if you look exactly, even the financial markets have kind of taken on that form. And global politics, it's not that we have created a controllable world. You really don't know where new wars break out, and the virus, COVID, has been a monster of uncontrollability, right? Yeah. And even on an everyday level, right? We have become almost omnipotent with a remote control in our hand, right? But if it fails, you might not be able to close the window and it rains or snows into your house, right? Or you cannot turn down the music or so, right? Everyone knows the feeling when you work on a computer and the computer simply says, just a moment, please, for hours, right? And you can't do anything. So instead of creating a world which is under our control, we have created a world which is monstrously uncontrollable, right?
Yeah, and when we talk about that a few years ago in Congreso Futuro, the example you gave us during the call was really interesting for me, and I kept saying, yeah, it's true. The idea of my cell phone is a reflection of me,
yeah.
And if I handed to you my cell phone, you won't be able to manage with the same ease that I do.
Yeah.
And 20, 30 years ago, everyone could manage any phone.
Any kind of device, yeah.
So, in a sense, it's interesting to note how humans, we create these monsters in terms of uncontrollable monsters, trying to control everything.
Yeah, it's almost like this. I mean, the smartphone, of course, is a very interesting thing, right? We got so addicted to it. But I think what is interesting there, it's become something I sometimes call it the mono channel to the world, right? Because we use it for everything, right? It's like you could say part of our body, but at the same time, it's the world, right? I work on it, I play on it, I communicate through it, I get my information through it, I get entertainment, maybe even erotic adventures, right? So it's my channel to the world, but it's always the same channel. It's my same body posture. I have the head lowered, right? And I glance at the small square, and my thumb goes over a very smooth surface which has no contours. So I think this form of being in the world is problematic, right? And again, this is why I think we need to do what you do at the Congress here. Think about what kind of humanity do we want to enact to make possible, and what do we dream of?
Thank you, Hartmut. We're gonna take a pause and then we come back to
Thanks a lot to you.
Talk a little bit more. Vamos a una pausa y volvemos a esta edición de entrevistas de Congreso Futuro 2025. Estamos de vuelta en esta serie de entrevistas de Congreso Futuro 2025, ¿Qué humanidad queremos ser? Y estamos con Hartmut Rosa, sociólogo general y profesor y académico, que nos invita a detenernos a reflexionar sobre la hiperaceleración de la vida moderna, Welcome back, Harmut. How are you?
I'm still fine. Thanks.
Harmut, we were talking about acceleration,
Yeah.
but also I know you um, had other concepts such as resonance as a counterpoint of acceleration. What do you mean by resonance?
Yeah, and I mean, when I analyzed the processes of acceleration and what they do to us, right, I realized, as we said before, it doesn't seem to give us the good life, right? People don't seem to be happy, you could say, right? But rather the opposite. I mean, we know also from data all over the world that mental health is deteriorating really. And by the way, particularly for young people, I find this very kind of frightening. All over the world, our high school students or university people or young people in general, they feel depressed. The burnout rates are very high, right? And for me, these are signs and symptoms of alienation, of a wrong way, you could say, or of a distorted way of being in the world, right? Of interacting with the world, right? So I can be alienated from you, for example, right?
Yeah.
Or from people when you feel it's simply they don't speak to me. Of course I can talk, but they don't touch me, right? But also from the work I do, maybe from the place I live in. Alienation it's sometimes been defined philosophically as a relationship without a true relation, right? So I ask myself, what would be a non-alienated form of being in the world, right? What's the opposite of alienation, right? So you could also ask, what is a truly related form of relationship? And this is how I arrived at the concept of resonance. When I'm in resonance with something, then I'm not alienated, right? Even in a conversation like we're having, right? What does resonance mean, right? It means on the one hand that what we talk, what you ask, what you say, touches me, it speaks to me, I find it interesting, right? You actually see it in my eyes, right? They kind of beam up and I think, oh, that's interesting, right? And even in the body, right? So, but it doesn't have to be conversations. It can be music, which all of a sudden touches me, right? Or a landscape like you have in Chile, right? With the Andes or with the desert. It means something to me. That's number one, right? And then I answer it, I do something with it. And that's the moment when I start to feel alive, right? That's the opposite of burnout or depression. Depression is the sign of alienation, the paradigm case, because it means nothing touches me and I'm incapable of reaching out, breaking my cell, so to speak, right? And connect. So resonance is a kind of dynamic interplay between ourselves and the world, you could say, right? It has these two elements. Number one, something speaks to me, something touches me, and I'm capable of connecting, of reaching out. You see it in the whole body, right? If someone gets in resonance. And there's always an element of transformation. In these moments when you come alive, you don't stay the same, right? You feel that there is change and there is movement, transformation within you. But, and this is where my ideas on uncontrollability come in, we cannot fabricate moments of resonance. We try to buy them, right? For example, commodify them. So you buy a ticket to a concert or a play, whatever it is, or maybe to a trip to the desert, right? And of course you might have, my favorite example there are cruises when you go on a ship and you get a polar light guarantee, right? You get the guarantee that you will see these wonderful lights, right? So you might commodify the lights, but you cannot commodify the experience. Maybe you are in a bad mood that day because you were in an argument with your friend, right? And then there's no resonance, right? So you cannot kind of engineer or bring about or instrumentally control resonance, and you cannot control the outcome of a resonant experience. So resonance is a different way of being in the world, of relating to the world. It has to do with what I think what life really is, right? And it releases a form of energy. When you get in resonance with the world, it's a kind of full of energetic encounter. And I think this is exactly what we are lacking when we're close to a burnout, right? It feels like I'm still working, but it's just me who has to invest more and more energy, right? Nothing is coming back. The thread between me and life is gone. So resonance for me is the conception of a good life. And I would like humanity to go there, right? So when you ask me what kind of humanity are we dreaming of, I would say we're dreaming of a resonant world, of a resonant way of being in the world.
I resonance a lot with that, with that idea, because it seems like every time you're trying to be in the world, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there's this idea of you have to be constantly in the world,
Yeah.
but the moment, I don't know, I enjoy baking, for example.
You enjoy?
Baking.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
You know? So at some point, I start baking for myself.
Yeah.
But it seems for for society or for other people, it was like you need to bake to sell, and I start selling my
Yeah.
baked goods. And at some point, it was like I don't want to do this. I don't feel connected with this. And for you, this constant this you can fabricate resonance,
Yeah.
but how could we live in resonance, for example?
Yeah, I mean, it's good that you ask this, because when I make this point about the uncontrollability, it sounds like there's nothing we can do, right? But what I mean is you cannot really engineer or fabricate the experience. But of course we can create, and we should think about the conditions under which it becomes possible to be in resonance, right? And there you see, and this is how it connects to acceleration, right? When you are under time pressure, then you will not get in resonance with anything, right? Because when I have to catch the airplane at the airport, right, I may not get in resonance with the most interesting person or the most interesting music or idea or landscape, right? I have to become deaf and blind in order to reach my plane. And with this acceleration, right, I really think we are now all the time on our way to the airport, metaphorically speaking, right? And also, so when I'm afraid, right, when you are capable of firing me or so, right, or when I'm in a competition, I have to fight the others, then it's very unreasonable and unlikely to be in resonance, right? So we cannot fabricate resonance, but we can think about the conditions which allow us to be in resonance. And when you speak about baking, right, I think there it might sound a bit romantic or nostalgic, but I'm only describing it, right? Resonance is it's necessary that you really become an agent, right? Working on things, right? That means there are some, it has a moment of uncontrollability. For example, my father was a baker, right? So I grew up with that. And he would say, and I think he was good at baking, right? But he said, every time the bread, when it comes out of the oven, is a bit differently, right? You have to watch it, to observe it, to react to it. Sometimes it's too dry, sometimes it's too wet, whatever, too hot or too not hot enough. So it's interaction, it's action, right? Nowadays we try to standardize and mechanize the process, right? So instead of baking, you just push 3 buttons, right? And I would say when you push 3 buttons or 5, right? Richard Sennett has written on this, right? That's not a process when you can really get in resonance with yourself and with the product and the things you do, right? So my idea that we cannot control or fabricate resonant experiences does not mean that we cannot control or even devise and design social conditions which allow us to be in resonance with each other, with ourselves, by the way. That's important too, right? And with the things we work on.
And there's a concept, or there's an idea that we mentioned earlier as well, that an increasingly pessimistic world, right? We live in an increasingly pessimistic world where there's no possibility because there's so many crises. There's no way to cope with those crises.
Yeah.
But has your work reflect on the possibilities of create this new world of coming back to optimism?
Yeah, I mean, this is very interesting. We at the university I work at, University of Jena and Erfurt also, right? We now have a new huge project, a collective project. It's called Imaginamics, right? It's not just about social imaginaries, which images of future life do we have, but about the processes of imagining, right? How can we actually collectively come into a situation, into processes where a new future we want to move towards is coming up. It's it's not about, I think it's impossible to simply say, oh, here's my new vision of the future, just accept it, right? So we have to think of the conditions and processes that we I would almost say, start dreaming again, right? And personally, I really want to work on this element of social energy, because I think this is kind of lacking, right? As you said, right now we only have pessimistic visions of the future. We walk in one of the apocalyptic scenarios. So what is missing? And I think what is missing really is this is what Hannah Arendt, the philosopher, right, speaks of this moment of natality, when kind of all of a sudden something new emerges, right, which then becomes attractive, right? And I think this actually springs from interactive processes where people really kind of work together, live together, think together, without. What I want to get at is that sometimes if things go well, even at a congress here, right? I mean, if you're really lucky, right? Then in a Congreso Futuro, right? All of a sudden, when you finish, you have the feeling, oh, there was something new emerged, right? And if something like that happens, you cannot say it was him or it was her who started it, right? It's kind of coming out of the middle. I want to get at this with the concept of medial passivity or the third voice. It's when you are in a state in between the active and the passive. So let's say you participate in a conference like this and you're totally active, you participate, but you're also totally passive, totally open to what others are saying, right? And then something new emerges out of the middle. And I think we have lost this form in between the active and the passive, medial passivity, where something new emerges, and I think we need to. What I want to do is to study, to analyze those moments. What does it need? What form of interaction is necessary to allow this new to emerge? But it's difficult because our culture is not really moving there.
It's difficult, but I think it's possible, and in that sense, activities like this are not just Congreso Futuro, but also other ways to connect with people, to bring that resonance and to try to let go the control at all times is always a good thing.
Yeah, but yes. Yeah, well, probably not always, right? I mean, sometimes there are conditions where we need to, which we need to control. But you're right. I mean, I like to quote Leonard Cohen there with his song Anthem.
Yeah.
There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And I would really say kind of almost everything we do, right? There are small openings, like small windows, where there's the possibility for resonance on every workplace, in every school, in politics. For example, if you do politics, right? Normally it's fighting, right, and kind of standing your ground and trying to make fun of the other or so.
Convince the other.
There comes a moment which really allows for real interaction. Again, that's the moment when you start to feel alive, and that's the small cracks where the light gets in.
Hey. Thank you very much, Hartmut, for this conversation. It's really, really interesting to see the possibilities and also to be able to, with your talk and the talks that are happening in Congreso Futuro, to answer the question, what humanity we would like to become.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for this interview, and see you at your talk later this evening.
Thanks a lot. All the best for you.
Y muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos en esta entrevista a Hartmut Rosa. Espero que la hayan disfrutado tanto como yo la disfruté. Muchas gracias y hasta luego.